All right, everyone. Welcome to Fertility TV. I'm Marc Sklar, the fertility expert, and we are here with Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor. And today we're going to be talking all about sleep. So I know that, and we'll talk about it, we'll touch on it at the end of the interview, but Michael is hosting a sleep summit, which I think is going to be fantastic for everyone listening. Such amazing, valuable information. It's a topic that is not often discussed and needs a little bit more attention, which is why he did it. And so I'm going to turn it over to Michael right now just to give us a brief introduction to himself and what he does, and then we'll get into some questions.
Sure. Well, so first of all, thanks, Marc, for having me. I love being on Fertility TV. I can't say I've ever been on Fertility TV before, so this is an exciting first for me. I certainly like that. And you know, sleep is such an interesting topic, and it affects so many areas of our lives. I've been very fortunate. I've spent the last 16 years of my career working with people with sleep issues. I have a PhD in clinical psychology, and I'm actually board certified in clinical sleep disorders. So I took a medical specialty board without going to medical school, and they said, oh my gosh, I guess you're a sleep doctor now. And so I've leveraged that in the world of psychology to really help people with insomnia. That's really my specialty. And I know that this group of people can have some challenges with not only falling asleep, but staying asleep during the whole fertility process. So I think this is just a wonderful group of people to be able to talk with, educate, get more interested and involved. I've been a practicing doctor for 16 years. I've worked in sleep laboratories, I've worked with different groups, I've worked solo as a practitioner, and I've been very fortunate to actually be on television a good bit. Some of you out there may have seen me on the Dr. Oz show. I'm the sleep doctor there as well. Yep. And so we talk a lot about sleep on there, and I'm really excited that, by the way, Marc, you participated in the summit. Really cool, great information, a lot of things that people hadn't really thought about are presented there, so I'm excited to have that as well. So again, thank you for having me on Fertility TV.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. You know, it's a big topic that I discuss with patients, and it's often brought up, right? Well, they might. Oftentimes, I get patients who say, "Yeah, my sleep's fine." I was like, "Well, tell me about it." You know, right. Well, it's fine because you're used to it, but it doesn't mean it's okay or it's fine, right? Yeah. So, and one of the things I always tell, and I actually stress this to my kids when they give me a hard time, is, you know, there's several things that are key, really, really important factors for our overall health in our lifetime. You know, the type of quality of food that we eat, the type of people we surround ourselves with, and sleep is a huge one that I focus on. So it's awesome for me to have you here with us today to share your knowledge and share about the Sleep Summit with everyone as well. So prior to our call today, I posted on my private Facebook group and asked all of our members in the group to shoot away, ask us some questions about what they were interested in with regards to sleep or sleep and fertility and reproductive health. And so we got a handful of questions, a ton of questions, and I've narrowed it down and to select 3 or 4. Let's see how many we can get through. And I think this would be a great place for us to start. So let's start there.
All right. Fire away.
So I think this is an awesome one, one that probably in some way or another resonates with others. So I pardon for looking up. I'm looking at my other screen. So it says, I take tryptophan and valerian root to help with sleep. We're very common that someone might be taking these. Sure. And these are okay. Are these okay to take while trying? And if we eventually become pregnant?
So great question. Certainly one that is not new to this group of people, actually to most people, is the use of a natural herbal supplement for sleep, and then during pregnancy or the attempt to get pregnant, what's kind of okay and what's not okay. So first of all, it depends if it's male versus female a little bit. We know that men reproduce their sperm almost every 24 hours. So whatever was in the system gets out of the system fairly quickly. That part is nice. When you're looking at valerian and tryptophan, Tryptophan actually is something that is naturally already produced in the body, so it's not necessarily something that I'm that worried about. I will say my big caveat is once you realize that, in fact, you are pregnant, the best thing to do is to not have anything else on board. We just don't know about the quality of supplements sometimes, even though it might have been working great for you when you've got an unborn fetus and you've got a lot of different things going on. We always stress, careful, right? We don't want to have any of these extra influences in there. And so I would say that tryptophan is certainly not a problem, but once you do realize you're pregnant, I would say it would be best to wean yourself off of it fairly quickly, because, by the way, you're going to become exhausted anyway pretty soon, so you're probably not going to need a whole lot of help in the falling asleep department. Valerian is probably the most widely tested root and herb for sleep that's out there. It's really an anxiolytic, so it helps reduce levels of anxiety. It's not necessarily a sleep inducer. What it does is it actually lowers your level of anxiety and then allows you to kind of coast naturally into sleep. It's been the most well-studied. Turns out that valerian works really well in conjunction with hops. So like the hops that you find in beer, hops, you can actually buy supplements that have a valerian hops ratio that actually can work quite well. Again, once you do realize that you're pregnant, I would say you want to get off of it as quickly as possible, because we don't want to have any influences there. While I haven't ever heard of any what are called teratogenic effects, right? So effects that an external supplement could have on the fetus, I never want to take chances. And so again, once you realize that you are pregnant, I would go ahead and get yourself off of those supplements right away.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. As much as those two supplements might be just fine when you're trying to conceive, once you do know you're pregnant, it's best to come off of anything that you don't need. And there's just not enough research, and probably won't be, on these items. So yeah, so it's best to come off of it. Awesome. So now to question number 2. Will the type of food and the quantity we take during dinner affect our sleep? I'm asking because I feel very tired back from work and just randomly have some food for dinner and crash on my bed. She can't get up. Most of the days I do have sound sleep, but occasionally I wake up in the middle of the night, which makes me worried as well.
Okay, so very common for people to ask the effects of food on sleep for all types of people. And so the answer is yes, food does affect our sleep. And it can affect it in very interesting ways. So let's look at a couple of different categories of food. So first of all is any food that contains caffeine, right? So that obviously caffeine is going to have an effect on your ability to fall asleep.
Sure.
Now what's interesting is I have lots of people who say to me, I can have a cup of coffee right before bed and I'm out like a light, right? Well, here's the thing is, number one, the reason that you're out like a light after a cup of coffee is because you're so sleep deprived that it's overriding that caffeine and you're conking out no matter what. But number two, if I strapped electrodes to your head while you were sleeping and you had that caffeine on board, I'm willing to bet you that you're not going to go into the deeper stages of sleep. You know, when we think about sleep, most times we're always thinking about minutes or hours of sleep. But I want everybody out there to remember that it's not just a quantity issue, but a quality issue as well. And caffeine has a direct effect on the quality of sleep, meaning it makes you fall into the lighter stages of sleep. Alcohol is another area that we always talk about. So there's a big difference between going to sleep and passing out, right? Okay, and so we need to make that distinction for people, and so that they understand that alcohol, while it does make you feel sleepy at night, believe it or not, it does keep you out of the deeper stages of sleep. It also affects your circadian rhythm, or that internal biological clock, which turns out to be extremely important when you're trying to get pregnant. So knowing and understanding that internal biological clock and not doing anything to change it is very, very important. The ways we do that is by keeping a very consistent sleep-wake schedule and by trying to really push alcohol as much as we can out of our daily routine, because again, as soon as you have a drink, it really affects your circadian system almost immediately. Now, can you have a glass of wine with dinner? Of course you can, but be careful because it is going to have an effect. It takes the human body approximately 1 hour per alcoholic beverage to digest through it. So what I tell people is if you have a glass of wine with dinner and you stop drinking by 8, I wouldn't want you getting in bed until about 9:30 to make sure that alcohol has been completely metabolized out of the system, not going to have an effect on your sleep.
Yeah.
The third area is the food itself, right? So what's out there that's going to have an effect on our sleep? It turns out there's a good bit of data looking at carbohydrates and sleep. And so what we now know is that carbo loading before bed actually does make you feel sleepier. And my theory behind that is twofold. Number one is it gives you a rise in blood sugar, and then there's a subsequent fall in blood sugar, which that fall or crash, if you will, may make people feel sleepy. But more important, when you ingest carbohydrates, it actually increases your level of serotonin, right? And serotonin is the calming hormone, right? And so that's one of those things that helps, take that anxiety from the day and really start to smooth it out. I know that the fertility process is one that can have some anxious aspects to it. Let's just be very straightforward here. There's nothing easy about being in a fertility situation, and there's a lot of anxiety that can come with that, and that anxiety can affect our sleep. And so I actually tell people one of the easy ways to help you with your sleep is to make sure that you are having a decent dose of carbohydrates in the evening. I am not a no carb kind of person, but it has to be the right kind of carbs, right?
Sure.
And so we don't want, high gluten. We don't want super high sugar. We want to have good carbohydrates. The cleaner your food and the more natural your food, the better off you are going to be from a sleep perspective for sure. One small caveat, though, has to do with the spiciness of your food. So I know this from personal situations. So my son and I, we go out for guys' night, and he always likes to go get hot wings for guys' night. That's his thing. That's what he wants to do. And we actually had guys' night last night. And so we went to a hot wing place. And you got to be careful eating too spicy of a food late at night because it can actually have digestive effects.
Right.
Gastroesophageal reflux is one, of course. But believe it or not, nightmares have been known to be related to spicy food intake.
Mm-hmm.
And so be careful about the spice level of your food. And I don't think you have to have bland food by any stretch of the imagination, but just be aware that that could be something that could be upsetting your stomach.
That's great information. Some things that, and I was coming up with questions as you were talking and you answered all of them. So that's great information. Love it. Okay. So I'm going to try and pare down this question just a bit and get to the meat of it. So this patient wants to know if there's a difference in the quality of sleep or the type of sleep, even if you're getting 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep, based on the time of night that you go to bed. So if she goes to bed at 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, does that impact the type of sleep, even if she's still getting 7, 8, 9 hours?
So I get asked this question, but in a different format often. Is sleep before midnight more important than sleep after midnight?
That's what she's basically asking.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I think, our moms told us, sleep before midnight is better than sleep after midnight. It all depends on consistency. If you are consistently going to bed at 1 and getting up at, let's say, 8 and getting your 7 hours and waking up and feeling good, I have no problems with that. It's the inconsistency in the schedule that can really throw off your sleep. So I always tell people sleep is a lot like a baseball game, right? And so it starts at 8 and it's going to end by 10:30. If you show up at the third inning, that didn't mean that the baseball game started at the third inning when you got there. It started on time. And your internal biological rhythm is one that would actually have an effect on that. So oftentimes what I'm explaining to people is going to bed at the same time and waking up at the same time really allows for that consistent effect. Doesn't almost matter what the time per se is, as long as it's consistent.
That's interesting. I mean, I discuss this often with patients, and when I'm talking about dealing with adrenal issues, certainly hormonal issues, and from a Chinese medical perspective and speaking to, medical texts or reading medical texts from that side of things, they certainly talk about going to sleep at a certain time of night and that the quality of sleep being different and associating that together. I think some of that might also probably depend on the patient and the individual and their specific needs, right?
Right. And so what you're tapping into, which is actually what my new book is about, is what's called a chronotype. Right. And so we know, and you've heard of chronotypes before, like an early bird or a night owl.
Right.
So it sounds like the person that we're talking about, their question could be a night owl or what I call a wolf.
Right.
And so these are people who like to stay up late and sleep late. It really depends. Once you figure out what your body naturally wants to do, stick with that. Because the closer you are to your body's natural rhythms, the better off you're going to be. And I would guess that the same holds true on a fertility standpoint as well, is not trying to fool around too much with your body's, chronotype, but being in line with that chronotype
working within
can actually
it.
help with fertility, would be my guess.
Yeah. And I had a little, for everyone listening, I had a little sneak peek at taking the chronotype quiz that Michael has out there in preparation for the new book, and it was super fascinating. The information I got was great, so I recommend everyone take a look at that. And I'll get the links from Michael, and we'll include it into the description here for everybody as well, so they can check that out. All right, and last question is, what's best to calm the mind before bedtime? Often I can't get to sleep because I can't seem to quiet my mind from all the thoughts. It's that time when I'm not busy and the internal dialogue seems to be the loudest.
And okay, so number one complaint I get is I can't turn off my brain when I lie in bed. And it actually makes sense, right? Because you're in bed, it's dark, it's quiet, nobody's asking you a question, there's nobody wanting something from you, and all of these thoughts come flooding in, right? What do I do about all of those thoughts?
Sure.
So there's a couple of different things that I have people do. So number one is you can do some form of a distraction technique, right? So that could be anything from, and you heard it here from the sleep doctor first, you can watch television to fall asleep. All right. Now, most people are like, what are you talking about, Michael? How can you say that? The truth is that most people who watch TV to fall asleep, they don't actually watch, they listen. So their eyes are closed, they're kind of listening out of the corner of their ear, and they drift off to sleep. 95% of televisions today in their software have a TV timer. So find it in your TV software and just have it click off after 45 minutes. It's a good way to distract you from a lot of those thoughts. But if you really think that some of those things are important and things that you want to address, I have my patients create what's called a worry journal. So right after dinner, around the 7:30 mark, I have people open up a notebook and write down, spend some time away from all the other stimuli, allowing yourself to think through your day. Like, what was my reaction to this? What do I need to take care of tomorrow? Write all these things down and on one side of the page, and then on the other side of the page, write down one solution. So I'm not saying solve the world's problems. I'm saying you might even schedule a time where you say, okay, Johnny's having a hard time at school. Tomorrow at 10:30, I'm going to talk to my significant other about this, as opposed to in bed at night right before we go to sleep, right? Though that's not going to be the time that's going to help get you, drifting off into sleep. But you'll notice that I didn't say do your worry journal right before bed, because that starts those wheels turning as well. My favorite thing to have people do right before bed is actually to do a gratitude journal. So keeping by your bedside all the things that you are thankful for and grateful for in your life, in the life of your family, in the life of your friends, because the more you think about things that you're grateful for and that are more positive, the easier it is to keep that calmness about you. What most people don't understand is your heart rate has to drop to a very particular level in order for your body to enter a state of unconsciousness. And by sitting there and thinking about stressful stuff, your heart rate's up, and we want to get that heart rate down.
Yeah, that's great. And we actually touch on some of that as well in our interview, which is a great segue, not planned, I'll have you know, which is a great segue into the Sleep Summit. So Michael interviewed me on the Sleep Summit, and I know a ton of others were interviewed, and they shared some great information. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the upcoming Sleep Summit?
Sure. So first of all, thank you, Marc, for participating in the Sleep Summit. Your information was incredible, very valuable. It's going to help a ton of people, so I'm excited about that for sure. We had 35 different experts in all kinds of different areas. So as an example, many of you out there know Ariana Huffington. She was one of the people that we interviewed. She has a new book, The Sleep Revolution, that just came out. I have a NASA sleep specialist. So the guy who takes care of the astronauts on the space station was telling us some of their interesting things. I have a patient with narcolepsy who's explaining what it's like to live with narcolepsy and how to identify that. I had an expert on sleep apnea talking about how people's throats can close in the middle of the night, prevent them from being able to be able to fall asleep. We had alternative medicine doctors talking about Chinese medicine in sleep, meditation in sleep, acupuncture in sleep. We had people talking, doing energy work in sleep. like things like grounding and earthing. We had a whole day on biohacking and sleep. So how to improve your sleep by doing a few quick things right away. I mean, honestly, it went on and on. We had thyroid specialists, adrenal specialists,
Sure.
we had hormone specialists. And then on an interesting note, we actually had grief specialists, right? So people who deal with folks who are dealing in a grieving situation, how can that affect their sleep? Emotional trauma and sleep. We had 2 different experts talking about that. So we really tried to encompass a whole host of very, very different ideas, and then how does sleep affect those areas, and then what can we do to help those people. So it turned out to be an amazing summit. I learned a tremendous amount, and I'm the sleep doctor, for God's sakes, and I learned so much from all these wonderful speakers, made some great new friends, you included. And so I'm excited to have had the opportunity to do this and to really learn from everybody. But it's easy to find. It's at sleepsuccesssummit.com, and it goes from August 8th to the 15th.
It's just around the corner.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. So, I hope everyone really tunes in to the Sleep Summit. It's going to be a fantastic event. Really well worth tuning in, listening, and gathering some tips. Check out the lineup, see what you want to listen to, and tune in from there. Thank you so much, Michael, for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and thank you for sharing your information. I know it was valuable. It was valuable for me, so I'm sure it's valuable for everybody else. Thanks so much.
Thanks again, and thanks to the community, and thanks for having me on Fertility TV.
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody else wants to find out any more information about fertility or Dr. Michael Bruce, then check out the description below. Thank you so much for tuning in, and check out Fertility TV in the future for all our other wonderful information. Thanks so much.